Well, that's how that loco should run over that point. Yesterday, when I made a quick video of the railway after not using the layout for a while, we was having trouble with the point in front of you where the diesels just passed. I kept finding that the loco would either stall on the point or after the point, and it was becoming quite a problem. Quite often the loco would just stop dead there and wouldn't move until I gave the loco some gentle assistance with a finger. And the problem was not the loco but the point. Now, although these points are TT gauge, 3mm, they work very like 00 gauge or N gauge points. Once the loco's gone over, here and here are two metal contacts, sprung metal contacts, and these contacts touch the underside of the blades. And of course the blades change direction when the point is changed, and this allows the engine, the train, to go straight through the point or off into the siding, past the signal box and behind the station. But it's crucial that contact passes through the contacts and the blades at all times. If the electrical current is intermittent, then obviously the loco will judder, slow down, or even stop. The current needs to go through that blade all the time for the loco to pass through reliably. And this wasn't happening, and part of the reason was because both contacts were black. They were absolutely filthy. Now you might think to yourself, you can just go along and get some sandpaper or emery board or maybe even a cotton bud with some alcohol on it to clean these contacts, but no, not at all. That's not the idea, simply because those contacts are so small, so fragile, and if bent out of shape the point will never work again. And from experience I've found that these little contacts are not very easy to bend back into shape, and if you do it, you run the risk of actually snapping the contacts off. So what can you do without damaging it or you know, making things worse? Well, a few months ago I went to a model railway exhibition, and you pick up all sorts of useful hints and other people's advice, some of it which is not very much use at all and is a load of rubbish, and some of it is very useful stuff. And I went to one of the trade stands and I saw this stuff, Track Magic, and you can buy it in most model shops. I have seen it before, and I picked it up and had a look at it, and the chap on the stall said, well, it's pretty good stuff, I highly recommend it. And I thought to myself at the time, me being the tight-fisted git that I am, you just want my money, I bet it doesn't work at all. And I've got the box here at £8.25. I wasn't too sure. However, it was a good job other people were listening, because there's a couple of chaps either side of me who strongly recommended it too. And I thought, well, it must do something. And I bought it for this point in mind, because ever since I've had this layout, that is the point that always gives me grief, and until today I've never been able to clean it out properly because I've been worried about damaging it. But this stuff well, it works as soon as you put it on there. And you may or may not be able to see in the centre of this little pot, you should be able to see some black residue. Well, that stuff came off of that point, and those contacts are tiny, and considering I got that much off of those little contacts shows you how dirty they were. And you get this useful little tool here, looks like a very small makeup brush actually, not that I'd know about such things, but you get this little brush here, and you just dip it into the solution and apply it to the troublesome item, that being the contacts on that point. And it worked straight away. They went from being black to a nice copper colour, which is what they should be actually. And in the pack you get this little pipette. You can use that to fill the little cup up there, or you can use it to apply the stuff on larger areas where you want it to spread. And you also get this little sponge on a lollipop stick, which is for cleaning the track itself. I haven't actually used that yet, because I tend to find that just an ordinary track rubber seems to do the job, and that's all I clean the rails with. And to be honest, when the layout's in regular use, I very rarely have to clean the track. It sort of cleans itself. And now I'm going to be using the railway a lot more. It should sort of clean itself now. So the moral of the story is this stuff actually works. I'm quite impressed with it actually. And if anyone else is having trouble with point work, whether it be on N gauge, 00 gauge, TT gauge, whatever gauge track you've got, this stuff does work. I haven't used it anywhere else yet, but you could certainly use it on loco wheels if they're, you know, particularly dirty. You could use it on commutators. Obviously keep this stuff away from the brushes, because I'd imagine if you let this stuff come in contact with the brushes of a loco, it would probably break the carbon down. But it certainly works well on point work. As you can see, there's no juddering when the loco goes over. The loco doesn't lose speed or anything like that. It just glides over and thinks nothing of it, which is as it should run. Yesterday when I was running the DMU, it did have a tendency to stop in a station, which is the right place I suppose, but the idea was to keep the locos running whilst I made that video. Another job I'm having to do is to glue bits and pieces back which have come unstuck. And one of the things was the bit of fencing there. I noticed actually after I made the video. I thought, oh dear, there's something missing there, and it was actually that bit of fence. I don't know what actually happened to the original bit of fence, but I can only assume that it's gone on the floor and got sucked up by the hoover. But I managed to find a little bit of fence that did the job. The little Great Western pannier that's running around the track at the moment was actually a kit-built loco, which I bought off of eBay, and it was actually a kit, there it comes now, that was built by someone else, and they'd not made a bad job in putting it together, and they'd, you know, chased out the inside of the bodywork to fit the chassis, and adapted the chassis to fit the body nicely. But unfortunately someone had actually painted the body with a dinner fork. Well, it wasn't quite that bad, but it was a pretty rough job, and I had to put the body in paint thinner and strip the old paintwork off, sand it down lightly and repaint it. And I've also put new transfers on it, as the person who did it before never actually put transfers on it in the first place. And I must say that it looks quite nice now. I'm not the best at painting locos, but I quite enjoy it. And this particular loco I think I managed to paint quite well. Certainly looks a lot better than it did before. It was in quite a state. And unfortunately over time the body was starting to come apart, where it wasn't quite joined together properly. But thankfully I've managed to put it all back together as it should, clean it up, service the chassis, and it's running quite nicely. I'll see if we can get a better shot there. There it goes. And the transfers are actually for 00 gauge engines, but to be honest I think they were a bit small, and I've managed to use them on this TT gauge pannier. And the coaches that are behind it are also kit built. These are made by Rosebud Kitmaster, which used to make a lot of kits back then in the 60s. They're not the best detailed kits, but they go together nicely and they're easy to build. But something I will say is that the plastic mouldings back then are not quite as good as the plastic mouldings now, and they are a bit rough around the edges, if you know what I mean. And you do need a very fine file to file down all the edges before you stick things together, because yeah, they're not cast particularly well. But they were only cheap in their day, and they look okay to me. The glazing that's inside them is actually flush glaze, so when you put it in, the window meets the side of the body, if you know what I mean, which is quite good. But they are very light, so I recommend that if you can, put a few pieces of lead inside the bodies, and they tend to hold the rails a lot better then. I think some of the kits actually came with weights included, but these particular coaches didn't. But I happen to have a few bits of scrap lead and bits and pieces lying around. And the loco running on the inside is an old Triang 08 shunter with some cattle wagons behind it. Anyway, if any of you do see this stuff at model railway exhibitions or wherever, it does work, and it's actually saved me having to replace that point, because although I have got a few in reserve for when any break or become well, clapped out, you know, these points are not made anymore, the track work isn't made anymore, and when it's gone, it's gone. So, you know, it's best to try and preserve these things if you can. And for 5 minutes of tinkering with that Track Magic, it was certainly worth it. Anyway, thanks for watching, and bye for now.